Alright, so we have the heat off, which is not gonna last. I will not be driving with no heat. So let's move a little bit here and see what happens. I think it should be able to work just fine without heat. I'm gonna try to drive a little bit here, see how far we can get. It is such a cool sound driving on the snow. Battery's only 33 degrees. So I really want to make it to the highway so I can accelerate and make sure that the battery doesn't come on. But so there we go. We got the engine on, even though we're not. I was accelerating pretty rapidly. So, good news is I turned my heat on now. I tested that. Heat on auto.
So quite a bit of road noise here, so we'll do some voiceover. I'm going to set the heat here to 60 degrees. It's the lowest it goes, and we'll see what kind of results we get from that. And right about here we get 2 bars of fan blowing on us, blowing some heat. It only took about 2 minutes and 30 seconds to get that heat going. And there we go. Now we got 5 bars of fan blowing heat on us. It took about 4 minutes from the turning on the heat to get that level. Let's see actually how cold it is. It feels insanely cold in the car. It's actually 32, 33 now in the car. And our engine's up to 141. We're almost up to full warm-up temperature here. Just a couple more degrees to go here. Oh, actually went down 1 degree there real quick. Now we're up to 159, which is considered kind of full warm-up temperature. Took about 5 minutes and 20 seconds to get up to there. Now that the engine is warmed up past that 159, it can shut off at any time. So I still have the heat set at 60 degrees, and we're waiting to see if that allows the engine to turn off more on the highway or not. In the previous tests, it's very hard to get the engine to shut off on the highway when it's this cold. Well, there we go, our engine is shutting off. As I let off the gas to make this transition to another highway here. Still blowing hot cabin air. You can see it's 51 inside the car. We'll see if it leaves the engine off or not when we continue to accelerate after we get around this bend here. A little on the gas right now. You can see the 14 kilowatts being used electricity. Here we go, accelerating. 12, 14, 15, 20. So we're up using almost 30 kilowatts. There's 30 kilowatts. 34. You see how much our engine cooled down there too, just from being off this short time. Oh, and there we go, engine's back on. As soon as I put on a cruise, I don't think that had anything to do with it. It's probably more about the, I don't know. I've had that happen a few other times, where as soon as I put on a cruise, the engine seemed to turn on, even though I was, accelerating more than the cruise usually does. Let's try to wash off this window, see if it freezes up. Yep, sure did. Let's put on the defroster to melt that away. You can actually see the temperature going down in the cabin here with the defroster on. The defroster's blowing warm air, but it's apparently just blowing it so fast that it can't produce the warm air fast enough. Not sure where this temperature data reads from, but interesting. So coming up here, this is an interesting thing I've never seen. You'll watch it, the engine here stays on, but it switches to EV mode. So now, right now it's driving completely by electricity, but the engine's still on. The temperature's still set at 60, it's still producing heat. So I don't quite know what it's doing here. Because it's not even, usually the piston will turn yellow if it's in like an idle check mode or something like that. But the engine just stays on, just sitting here idling. So you can see the engine's just continually cooling down, and we even go up here, we're even using up to 26, 27 kilowatts on the electricity, 28. And still the engine's just sitting, is doing a little more than idle now, 1100 RPMs. But it just keeps cooling down. It's still heating the cabin. It's 53 in the cabin. And you can see the engine's not producing any kilowatts right now. It's usually, even if it's idling, it's charging the battery a little bit, so that's a very strange situation. So you'll see here it keeps, like, now it's up to 1200 RPMs. It keeps slowly increasing the RPMs, I think maybe to try to figure out at what RPMs does it need to run to keep the engine warm and heat me. And now here it almost gets up to 1300 RPMs. Just keeps raising them RPMs, and then 1290, 1280, 1290, and then boom, shuts off the engine. So I don't know if it just gave up trying to heat the car with the engine. Now it's going to try to use the heat pump. But then you'll see here, the engine's going down in temperature, bam, it turns the engine back on after just a few seconds of being off. And now it's driving with the engine again, and it's up at 1400 RPMs. So it's still chilly in the car, but it's definitely comfortable. Temperature's still set at 60 degrees. Okay, so here now the engine shuts off again. We still got the heat set at 60. It's 10 degrees outside, so goes to show you can use the EV even when it's this cold. It just needs to warm that engine up, keep you warm. And I really don't know why it's turning on or off. It's not really acting like on any of the other trips I've taken. But I have never set it to 60 degrees, so. But you would think it would still just let the engine get colder. Like in other trips, we got the engine to get down to like 96 degrees before it turned back on. And that temperature just plays a huge role in how it acts at this temperature. So let's change our temperature up to 62 and see what happens here. There we go, our engine's off again. Let's go back and let's turn our temperature up a little bit here. We'll go up to 64 here. So we'll go to 65. Fan's still blowing about 5 bars. Still in auto mode, and now the temperature's set at 65. It's 57 in the cabin. Now it seems it's cycling at a different rate, like a lower temperature threshold, because the engine will turn back on around like 129 and then back off at 143. It's like it treats it as if you have it set at 70 when you're driving in the city, because it knows it's going to cool the engine off faster. Let's turn our temperature up to 66 here. So now it's set at 67. Let's go up to 68 here. Engine's down to 136. And 132, and there we go, the engine's back on at 132, so it's a couple degrees different from the 129 that it was turning on before. Let's see where it shuts off. So it looks like it has 68 setting in the cabinet. The engine doesn't really want to shut off even when it gets up to temperature here. As in the other situations, it shut off at what, 140 something. So let's turn down the heat here to 66. Let's see if we can find a threshold that will shut off the engine. So I've had trouble before. This is the first time I've ever been able to have it turn the engine off while I'm on the highway when it's this cold. You see the engine turn off here, but it's just because I let off the gas to take this exit here, and then it does remain off for a while, but once the engine gets cold, it does turn it back on. We're still set at 65 degrees at this point.
There we go. So the engine came on, but I shut it off basically by just turning my heat down to 60, and it's 66 in the cabin. So turn the fan down to 1, and now the engine will stay off. I still have 13.6 miles of electricity left, and I am almost at my destination. Let's see if we can make it in, huh?
Okay, so let's go through our numbers here. Looks like we got 59.8 miles to the gallon on our 20.2 mile trip. That was from 8 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Looks like we used 4% of our electricity for heating, so a little bit of it did use for the heating there. 4.1 kilowatt hours per mile. And 28% of the driving was on EV, average 47 miles per hour, 26-minute drive. We still have 63% of the battery left from a full charge. And we have a nice score of 93. Excellent AC setting. Keep that AC setting. So, hope this was informative. It was a kind of a curious trip this time with the way you had the heat settings. But we'll do some more here. Almost done with these cold ones. We'll get back into regular temperature ones. So like it if you liked it, subscribe, comment if you got any questions or complaints or whatever you want, and most importantly, have fun.